Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this daily conversation around all things COVID. We're discussing three crises: the health, financial, and racial inequality crisis on this show. And we're always looking for guests and theme ideas. Please email me, sree@sree.net, if you would like to be on the show or you know someone who should be. We have people watching from all over the world. Today, we have a special episode for you, not just special in time. 3 p.m. Eastern is much different from the time we usually meet, but also special because of what we're covering. We're talking about the importance of brands and brand trust at this time through the pandemic. We're joined by a return guest. We're very excited to have back on our screen Tonia Ries, who is Executive Director of Intellectual Property at Edelman, and David Bersoff is a newcomer to us, Head of Thought Leadership Research at Edelman. They'll be with us in just a minute. In the meantime, please hit share on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We're live on all those platforms, and I'll bring them to you. I'll bring our guests to you in just a minute. Hi, everybody. I'm Sree Sreenivasan. I am the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism and the co-founder of Digimentors, a social, digital, and virtual events consulting company. Our motto: don't cancel your event, don't postpone it without talking to us. And if you've got plans for a virtual event, bring us on board to just talk to you about how you're thinking about it. We are here to help. We do events for 100,000 people or 20 people. We can help you. And with that, let me thank our sponsors who make this possible. We want to thank the sponsors who have made it possible for us to be here with you. Muckrack Academy, Fundamentals of Social Media. This is a free certification course available right now. 4,000 people have taken it. Any background, anywhere, any profession, join us. mrac.co/social, mrac.co/social. I learned a lot putting it together, and I know you will too. So don't miss it. mrac.co/social. We also want to thank our friends who are putting together She's on Call. Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar and Dr. Marina Kurian. They are surgeons here in New York, and they have a weekly show on Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern. Please find them on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitter. This past Sunday, they had Dr. Wendy Sinta and Dr. Tamara Fountain. One is an obesity expert, the other president of the largest ophthalmological association. And they had a fabulous conversation about COVID and much, much more. And they'll have another great episode this Sunday. I'm honored to be a co-executive producer of that show. I'm not in front of the camera, and I get to be behind the scenes as they do great work. We also want to thank our producers who make this possible, the producers who work every single day to work with you and work with me to bring this show to you. In our first 125 episodes, we've had 234 guests from 48 cities, 13 countries. 143 of them have been women, because we wanted to make sure we have a truly diverse cast of speakers and guests and experts. We've had doctors, nurses, authors, journalists, CEOs, founders, teachers, professors, and so much more. Our producers are Rose Horowitz, who's at Rose Horowitz 31, and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon. And before we bring our guests on, we want to tell you about upcoming shows that you will not want to miss. We have a show on Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern with Maria Ressa, the Filipino journalist who's in deep trouble because she has spoken out against President Rodrigo Duterte, and she'll be with us at 9 p.m. Eastern. And on Friday, a change of pace, one of the biggest shows in Netflix anywhere in the world, Indian Matchmaking. Smriti Mundra will be with us. She's executive producer of the show. She's also the Oscar-nominated director of St. Louis Superman. Also with us is Vyasar Ganeshan, who's a participant in Indian Matchmaking. This is a top 10 show on Netflix America and worldwide. I'm not sure how to describe him. He's not an actor on these reality shows. What is the right word? Maybe someone will know and will tell us in the comments. So with that, let me welcome everybody. Tell us where you're watching from. We're so delighted to have you here with us. We're talking about brands, we're talking about trust, and we are so delighted to have with us our special guests. So let me bring them on board so they can say hello. I'm giving them a heads up. They're coming off the backstage, the virtual stage, the green room, to be with us, to join us on the stage. Please say hello to Tonia. Hello, how are you?
Hi, how are you, Sree? Good to see you again.
Great to see you. Welcome. And we're also joined by David. Hi, David.
Hi.
Thank you for being here, both of you. My first question is always the same. Tonia, to you first. Tell us how you're doing and how's your family?
Oh, thank you so much. I am doing well. I am fortunate to have a nice, comfortable place to quarantine, and so I've been enjoying my garden, and everyone's doing well and is healthy.
Thank you. Great to hear that. And let's go to David.
Yeah, the family's doing good. We've been trying to get this wedding done since June, and we rescheduled for October, and the venue is already canceled for October. So now we're thinking about maybe something outside in Central Park. But that's a big thing in the Bersoff family mind is how do we get this wedding done?
And the wedding is the wedding. So you're still working on the dates and things, you said?
We're just trying to find a place that will let us gather in a group larger than 10.
Right. Yes, I can understand that, and we wish you the very best with that. Let's talk about why we're here today. We're talking about an important new report that both of you worked on with Edelman, and I should tell Tonia that she was with us about 100 days ago or so with another report very early in the crisis. You had already done a coronavirus trust report, and you said something to me that has stuck with me every day since then. You said that people want to hear from brands, but they want solutions, not sales. Solutions, not sales. So I've been saying that to my team. I've been saying that on the show on a regular basis. I've been giving talks all over the world from this seat, and I've been saying the same thing, crediting you for saying that. So thank you for giving me one piece of insight that makes me sound smart. So I'm expecting at least 3 to 5 to 10 to 15 smart new things that I can learn. Let's start with something very simple. If you can just explain what is Edelman and what does it do and what is the Trust Barometer. So a little bit of background. And to everyone watching, please share this with your family and friends. Tag them, share this, retweet, and they can watch live or later, because this will start right here as soon as this is over on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and on LinkedIn. So over to Tonia.
That's great. Yes, Edelman is a large global communications firm. We work with clients all around the world to help them promote, protect, and evolve their brands. And one of the most remarkable things about Edelman is that we have been researching trust for 20 years now. This is the 20th anniversary of the Trust Barometer. Historically, what we've looked at is trust in institutions. We look at the institutions of business, government, NGOs, and the media. And more recently, in the last 5 to 6 years, we've also started looking at trust in brands and the extent to which consumers want to be able to trust the brands and the role that brand trust plays in the consumer purchase process. And in that time, what we have found has just been remarkable in terms of the growth and importance of brand trust. We've tracked the rise of something that we call belief-driven buying. So people who buy brands based on alignment with their beliefs and values, and they will boycott or switch brands if they find out that a brand stands for something that they don't like or is failing to take a stand for something that they don't like. And it started early on, obviously, with younger generation or affluent consumers, but over the last 3-4 years, it has really become a mainstream consumer mindset, with 2/3 of consumers saying that they are now belief-driven buying. So it's really not that shocking that when we are in a world where there is a public health crisis, an economic crisis, that people really expect brands to take a stand, to get involved. And then, of course, even more recently, we've had the conversation around systemic racism become one that brands and companies cannot ignore either. So it's a very new world for marketers, right? They're getting involved in conversations that historically they just have not had to. So it's a fascinating time to be working on trust.
Thank you. So you put together this report. How does this fit in with the report that you did a few months ago? And you also, the reports that you've been doing for many years have come out at very high profile events such as Davos and places like that. So where does, because of COVID, of course, things are now a little different. So please talk about that too.
Yeah, it's been an interesting year for us, right? Because we launched our January Trust Barometer at Davos this year. And then, very shortly after, the world changed. And we felt in many ways that, we couldn't necessarily, as we usually do, use the same data that that was based on data collected before the pandemic to understand the world that we now live in. So we've been doing quite a few research studies. We've actually done 5 additional studies since the pandemic hit, looking at the expectation for employers, the expectation for brands. We did a flash poll on systemic racism and the expectation for brands to participate in that. So this report that David and I plan to talk about today is sort of the culmination of that work, where we did a deeper dive to try to understand, okay, now that we're past the initial response to the crisis, what are some of the behaviors that have truly shifted that are going to be with us longer term? And in this new world, what is the role of trust for brands, and how has that changed? And how can we help brands sort of navigate the next 6 months, if you will? Typically, this report launches at the Cannes Lions Advertising Festival in June, which of course this year was a virtual event. So in some ways, it's given us a little bit more flexibility to be responsive to the world rather than being tied to specific event launches.
Thank you. We're just going to, before we start, we're going to do what we call our global tour, where we look at people watching from around the world. Twyla is watching just down the street. She's thanking Renee Edelman, our friend at Edelman, who has been so supportive of the show and has brought us great guests, including Tonia from last time and here again. And Jonathan Borstein is watching from Union Square. He has watched 133 straight episodes and has been a guest on this show. Let me ask both of you, are there restaurants that you are really hoping you can get to as soon as the crisis is over or when they open? Is there one restaurant that, it doesn't have to be in Union Square, it could be anywhere in New York, or anywhere in the world? What would you say, David, that you would love to get to?
One of the things I love about New York City the most is the fine dining.
I'm sorry, David, people are saying that your volume is really low. Is there a way you could boost that, or maybe just shout like I am?
How's this? Is this better?
It's slightly better. I'm sorry to do this. Yeah, go ahead. Let's see. Let's try that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's much better already. Thank you.
All right. So as you can see, I'm talking right into the microphone. Anyway, one of the things that I love the most about New York City, of course, is the fine dining. And we've tried takeout from some of the 3-star Michelin restaurants around here. It's not quite the same as being there. So I'm just looking forward when I can eat inside a nice upscale restaurant again.
Great. How about you, Tonia?
I miss restaurants, and I also really miss live music a great deal. My favorite New York City restaurant has been a place in the West Village called L'Artusi. I hope all my friends there are doing well, and I really hope that they come back strong when we open up again.
That's what we're all hoping, isn't it?
Yes.
We hope that for sure. Billy's watching from Atlanta. He runs the Bump Experiment, where he helps people who are in trouble by helping them monetarily and in other ways. I learned so much about kindness from him. He calls it Bump It Up. That's the name of his project. Rose Horowitz is watching, one of our wonderful producers, and she's live tweeting with the hashtag #SweetCovid19 call, and she's at Rose Horowitz 31. Please follow her. Mark is watching from Durham, North Carolina. Hi, Mark. Have you folks been to that part of North Carolina?
I used to live in Chapel Hill before I moved up to New York.
Perfect. How about you, Tonia?
No, I have not.
All right. And Renee is watching. I'm excited to be here today. as they discuss Brand Trust 2020 with Sree. Billy says, love the topic. I support brands that give back to the community, and we'll talk a lot about this. And we have questions. Christine is watching from Dubai. Hi, Christine. Have you folks been? Tonia, have you been?
I have not been to Dubai either.
Okay. How about you?
Closest I've gotten to Dubai is Bahrain.
Okay, that works as that part of the Middle East. One of the things we do with this, Tonia, is that people say, okay, this is going to be my bucket list after travel is allowed again, or some people said life list. Bucket list is too serious. We have people. Stefan is watching. Says always look forward to hearing insight from the pros at Edelman. Thank you for sharing, Tonia and David. And just so many comments coming in. Pradnya is watching from Silver Spring, Maryland. She says she's been missing in action for the last couple of weeks. So let's go to the report and let's talk about the report. So the easiest thing I can do is I'll kind of flip through the report as you talk, Tonia, and then you'll bring in David as we go here. So let me pull this up. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so here we go.
So we're not going to go through every single slide. The report is online, and we can share the link with you guys. But I want to draw your attention to maybe some key points. Why don't we start, Sree, on slide 6. So let me just say that we feel that
before we go there, I'll just show them that there's a whole report. It's available. We'll put the URL on the screen for you in a minute, and people can go in there, and there's great stats. This is why I want you to watch. I want you to share this with your friends. They can watch this later and pick up all this great information. So we're going to slide 6 right here.
Now, actually, if you could back up to the methodology page that we just went past, just so people don't get lost. One more further, slide 5, please.
Right here.
There you go.
Okay, good. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so what you can see here is that the data is based on 22,000 respondents, right? So 22,000 people took this survey, 2,000 people in 11 different markets. So there's a very robust sample behind this. And then in addition to this new data, you may see in the report information from the earlier reports that we referenced at the introduction here. So, and those are mentioned at the bottom here. We had the first one, Sree, that we talked about last time, brand trust and the pandemic, and then our poll on brands and racial justice. So there's a lot of research we've done. And as I said, this is both a new report as well as sort of a summary of some of the key trends and findings that we've seen. Awesome. You know, and as I said a moment ago, it's really a huge expectations for brands to stand up. The other trend that we've been tracking that I think everyone will find really interesting is this sort of blending of brand and reputation and company reputation, right? When people think about brands today, they really make no difference between what they expect from that brand and how they want the company to behave as a citizen in the community and towards their employees as well, right? And that really came out clearly in the report on brands and racial justice. But let's focus on trust. So if we could go ahead to the next slide with data, which is slide 7, what we really discovered is that with these crises hitting the world, brand trust has now become a make or break attribute for brands. And it is now seen as only second in importance to price for purchasing, right? So when I'm deciding whether to buy a new brand, what are the things that I focus on the most when I'm making that decision? Well, can I afford it? Number one. Number two, do I trust the company that owns the brand or the brand that makes the product? And you can see we asked a couple of lines further down another trust-related question, which is, do I trust the product to perform well? That, of course, is also an important criteria, but less important even than trust in the company and the brand, right? And then we asked a second series of questions. What is top of mind when you are looking to become a loyal customer and choosing to, give your loyalty to a brand over time? And again, trust, number 2, behind price and affordability. And this to us was a huge finding because it is such a change from what we've seen in the past. So if you could put up the next slide, Sree, let's just look at 2 more slides and, then maybe pause and see if people have questions. We now have nearly half, 46%, who say, I buy brands, I fill my cupboard, I fill my shopping basket with brands that I trust, right? And that is, as you can see, a 12-point increase in just a year when we asked the same question last year. And in some of the markets that we measured, that increase is even more impressive, including here in the US, where we saw a 20-point increase, a 21-point increase in Brazil, a 23-point increase in Germany. So for all kinds of consumers in different markets, brand trust is becoming more important than it was in the buying decision process. And then when we asked them, if we could do one more slide, please, is it more important to you that you can trust a brand today than it was in the past? 70%, a huge majority, agree with that sentiment, right? And then if we look at the demographic chart at the bottom, look at the age group that says that is the most likely to agree with this statement, which is younger consumers, right? That 18 to 34-year-old cut, those are the people really paying attention to trust these days and whether they can trust a brand. 77% say it matters even more today than it has in the past. So we've seen a huge increase in brand trust. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments on that section. The next data point that I can give you, if you want to go maybe just one more slide, is that the reasons that brand trust is becoming more important, some of them, are pretty obvious and some of them less so. And in our last conversation, we talked a lot about the expectation for brands to deliver solutions. But as you can see, those solutions have to be both big and personal, right? I am feeling more vulnerable personally, but I also want brands to have more impact at a societal level. So for example, because of the pandemic, I am relying on brands more to keep me safe, to help me get through day-to-day challenges. Pandemic-related reasons show up on the personal side, but also on the societal side. For instance, brands will have a huge impact on how quickly and safely the economy recovers, right? So do I trust them to do the right things there? But it's not just the pandemic, it goes beyond that. In fact, the most important of the individual reasons that you see on this slide are about the environment and climate change, right? Those other issues have not gone away. How brands produce and deliver products having an impact on the environment was chosen as one of the reasons trust matters more by 44% of our respondents. And then, of course, brands are representing me more. They're representing my values. I don't want them to reflect badly on me, right? So there's so many ways that people see brands as representing them both personally and at a broader level in the world, for which brand trust matters more. So, people are changing their buying behaviors based on trust, based on a brand's response, and the impact is just tremendous.
Yeah, David, you would like to add anything to that?
No.
So let's look at some of the comments. We're getting questions from all over the world, but I'm going to ask Tonia a question first. In putting this together, what surprised you with all these great stats that you've been able to get and these great metrics?
Well, I don't want to steal David's thunder, so I'm not going to tell you my biggest surprise, because that is coming when we start to look at, what are the roles that brands want, that people want brands to play in their lives, and where is that expectation not being met. And I was actually really surprised on some of those things. I think it's one thing for people to say they care, but it's another thing for them to actually take action and make changes in their behaviors based on that, right? And that's where I think the number of people who say that it just since the pandemic has started, I have changed my behavior, right? I have started using a new brand or stopped using a brand because of their response to the pandemic. Those numbers have now gone up to 44, 45% of consumers in just the last 3, 4 months, right? Who have changed buying behaviors based on this. So I am just impressed, right? That people today are really taking this seriously, and they're not just talking about it, they're actually taking action. And what's so interesting is that the action is about making sure that the brands are taking action as opposed to just paying lip service.
Right, and that's one of the things that I wanted to check. You're finding that people are saying this to you. These are the things that they care about, but you're also seeing that translate into buying decisions and actual purchasing as well. We have lots of comments coming in here. Billy, watching from Atlanta, says, I personally will pay more for a brand that gives back, such as Subaru and Target, as opposed to paying less for something that may have a bias or does not give back. Does the research support a percentage value community over profit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people will support brands that show they are dedicated to the community, right? And that really manifests itself in two ways. One is the community in which the brand is based and located, but they also want to see brands do the right thing for their employees, right? So making sure that the brand's employee base, for instance, accurately reflects the community from a diversity standpoint, making sure that the brand is keeping their employees safe, right? That if their employees are essential workers, that they're being protected, that they're being financially looked after. Those are all things that consumers are paying attention today. And it's showing up in our research every time we do a poll like this.
Thank you. We're looking at some of the other comments. Linda says, thank you love the data. Thank you for sharing. I think it's important to remind folks how many countries you did this research in, and also how many people you talked to for this. So I'll pull back I'll bring back the document but you have it in front of you, so you can just tell us if you have that easily.
Sure. 11 countries that we surveyed, and in each country, 2,000 general population respondents. So this is research data based on 22,000 interviews.
Yeah. Could you talk about the grouping of countries, like which continents you were able to hit, and how did you pick the 11? I see India is there as well, and Brazil. And so how did you pick the 11?
Yeah, we've got all major regions of the world represented. And that was really our goal, is to be able to say that this is a global study. Obviously, 11 is a small number of countries relative to the total number in the world.
A big population, right?
Exactly. And some regions are more difficult to survey than others. But the survey does include, we have South Africa, we have Brazil, North America, of course, is represented with the US, Canada. In Europe, we have Germany, France, and the UK, and then India, Japan, and South Korea, along with China in the Asian part of the world. So it's a pretty good representative sample. We wanted to get into the largest markets with the biggest consumer bases.
And how does this compare in terms of what you've been doing historically? And how were you able to do this in the pandemic? Did you change your methodology in terms of the kinds of interviews you were doing, phone-based, Zoom-based, et cetera?
David, I'm going to let you address that one.
Sure. Actually, if there's any silver lining to a pandemic, it's that people tend to be home and near their computer, and we do all of our research using online surveys. So it was actually not that difficult to collect the data we need, even in the context of what is going on out in the world today.
Thank you. So in terms of, what was your role in this, David? Can you just talk about that?
Well, sure. So my background is in the social sciences. So I am a social/cross-cultural psychologist by training. And so my role is really to to kind of develop the questionnaire, think about different perspectives we can use to look at trust, different frameworks that we can use to understand how and why people trust. It's sort of, if we were to do a division of labor, my job is to make sure that we have something interesting to say, and Tonia's job is to make sure that we say it in a good, compelling, interesting manner and that it looks good. It's sort of like, I write the lyrics and she composes the music. But the idea is that, I take a social scientist orientation towards the topics we study. So, in research or in business research, you have your traditional market research, which is, how many ounces to put in the bottle or how many chips to put in the cookie. And that's not the same thing as sort of thought leadership research, where it's less about making specific business decisions about a specific product and more about how do we understand important things going on in consumers' minds and consumers' lives. And that's more of a social science orientation towards research than a market orientation towards research. And that's kind of my job, is to supply that social scientist take on how to study something as complex and multifaceted and nuanced as trust.
Thank you. We have comments coming in. Linda asks, at this stage of the pandemic, are there any recommendations of what already trusted brands should do to maintain high level of brand trust?
Maybe that actually takes us into the next phase here. So, Tonia's point was that trust is more important than ever for brands, and as a bigger factor in purchasing. It's sort of the message that I wanted to deliver is that trust. It's much harder to come by these days than perhaps ever before. And there's kind of three reasons why I think the trust challenge that businesses and brands are facing today are greater than they've ever seen, perhaps in all of history. The first one is promises they made. So we need to remember that pre-pandemic, business was doing a lot of talking about adopting what was called a multi-stakeholder versus a shareholder approach. So they were really talking about emphasizing doing good and not just doing well, about paying attention to their values and not just their value. So they were already talking about playing a bigger role in society and committing to be a positive force of change more than just supplying a good product at a good price and employing people. So at the same time that they were making these promises, which is sort of source of pressure one, source of pressure two is that even before COVID, we were seeing lower levels of trust in government. That when you looked at the relative trust of, say, business versus government, government was largely untrusted. It was largely seen as both lacking in ethics and lacking in competence. And as a result, people started looking for a new hero. They started looking for an institution they could trust to lead us into the future or make the future look better. Now, in my mind, they should have picked NGOs because, in theory, NGOs are highly ethical and are in the business of doing good and helping make society better. The problem with NGOs is they're not as good at getting things done. So while their ethical ratings are high, their competence ratings were low. In contrast, for business had pretty high competence ratings, but fairly low ethical ratings. And as a result, people picked business as sort of their savior. I talk about the fact that instead of being a hero, what you really have is that that business is the anti-hero. It gets things done, but it doesn't necessarily have a heart of gold. And so as a result, business became the go-to institution. And suddenly brands were expected to weigh in on social issues. Employers were vetted based on whether their values matched mine and whether they were actively engaged in making the world a better place. And even investors started getting serious about ESG considerations when deciding where to put their money. So you had the promises they were making, the expectations piled on brands because government wasn't getting done. And then if you go to slide 48, you sort of see the third element and perhaps the most profound element of the challenge. So slide 48 in
Hold
the...
on, I'm getting there.
Okay.
We were scrolling. This is a long, wonderful report. So this is we're going to slide number 48 so people can see it. And here we go.
Yeah. So I just want to give you a sense of the magnitude of the expectations that brands are under. So it wasn't that long ago where, in order to be trusted, what a brand needed to do was essentially produce a good product or service, deliver good customer service, sort of clean up their own messes, be a reasonably decent employer, and return shareholder value. But if you did that, you were generally seen as a business or brand in good standing. What we did in this study is we went out and we wanted to see if the roles that brands and businesses are expected to play, if that list had gotten bigger, and if so, what does that look like? And what you see here are the 16 roles that we asked consumers, whether or not it was important that businesses or brands do this. And we were fully expecting there to be, winners and losers, that there were some things that were going to be highly important and then some things that weren't going to be terribly important. What we found is that other than for the role of self-expression, which you can see here as this idea of being a means of self-expression, and entertainment, which is being a source of entertainment, all these other roles had over half of people saying it's important to them that brands do these things. So brands, these poor brands that used to just have to make sure that, they were competent and thoughtful to their consumers and sort of respectful to their employees, suddenly they're being called on to be protectors and to be dependable providers and reliable sources of information and innovators and educators and commerce and sources of joy, sources of connection, a source of personal inspiration, a safety net, especially for, again, filling those gaps left by government, collaborating, working with other entities, whether it be competitive brands or even other institutions to help solve our thorniest problems, to be a problem solver, to be a positive force in shaping our culture, and to be visionary. I mean, this list is incredibly daunting, but this is the task before brands today. So at the same time, trust is becoming more important. How you get there has become more difficult, and the penalty and expectations that you meet these different roles has just basically gone off the charts.
Thank you. Tonia, your thoughts?
I think just to bring home the point that David was making, Sree, you're going to have fun scrolling. I'm going to ask you to go all the way back to slide 15.
All right.
Because
my fingers are getting a workout here. Slide 15 is coming up.
yes.
Yep, go ahead.
We asked, David made the point that, more than half of people want brands to do all of these things. Another way we ask this question is, what is it that has become more important to you and what has become less important to you about brands? And I just think that the contrast between these two lists is really remarkable and very telling. Here, look at what is less important, right? Does the brand make me look like I am successful? Does it make me look like I am cool, right? Does it make me look like James Bond? Less important. What's more important is it safe? How does it treat its employees? Is it environmentally friendly? And look at how much of a delta there is, right? By 36% versus 12, 30% versus 14. Is the brand made in this country and locally sourced? And cost, right? A lot of people are being very conservative financially or, for good reasons, or maybe are even struggling financially. So there's a real shift there in terms of brands being less about image and self-expression in people's minds and consumers' minds, and more about truly solving problems for me and for society, and being a productive part of the world.
This is, I think, huge for brands to understand. We hope they are watching carefully. You have you released this sometime in late June. So what has been the response from your clients and as well as the general public who work in business who care about this?
Yeah, I mean, what we're hearing and is people are really just very grateful to have this information, right? Because the world has changed so much, and it has so many implications for how brands, operate, how they communicate, what they're so the what I'm hearing is that this idea that David described of help me understand the role that I'm expected to play, and that is incredibly helpful, right? Because now what marketers can do is to think about, okay, if people want me to be a protector, or to look after making sure that there is quality information in the world about our problems, right? And that part of my role is to make sure that people have access to that quality information. How can I, as a brand, right? How does it make sense for my brand to show up? And what can we do, given our resources and our values, to help them participate?
Thank you.
Now suddenly you're unlocking a conversation that can be incredibly helpful and prescriptive, because you match that role expectation, those actions, the solutions, with your specific brand values and resources, and you can write a whole new marketing and communications plan, that can work really well in the world today.
Thank you. We have several questions that are coming in, and folks, we only have a few minutes left with our guests. Please share this right now. Tag your friends, anyone who would be interested in this topic on LinkedIn, in Facebook, in Twitter, YouTube. We're there, and they'll all be archived. As soon as we're done, you can see the whole thing, and you can access the report by just searching the Edelman Trust Barometer 2020. They have a whole website on edelman.com to find this, so we encourage everybody to look at this. Rishika is asking, is it possible to talk something about how crisis management in the entertainment industry, did you break it out in terms of those kinds of industries, or was it mostly consumer brands? Just talk about that, please.
Well, we do have data in the report that you'll see broken up by category. And one of the categories we looked at is streaming content and entertainment. So I encourage you to take a look at the report. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by crisis management in that industry specifically. We, happy to talk offline.
Right.
But I think
we'll just look at it. I think people can look at that and understand that question. So I think that's good. A LinkedIn user says trust deficit in institutions is a crisis. And
yes.
Vandana has linked to the report. It's edelman.com/research brand trust 2020. Here is Mark's question. Were you surprised that brands' efforts in sustainability and environment weren't rated higher?
Well, the expectation is high, right? That brands participate and do the right thing when it comes to the environment. So it was one of the highest that we saw. And in fact, I actually was surprised to see that expectation was higher than it is for, brands' participation in addressing the pandemic even.
Right.
So while we're in the midst of a public health crisis, the environment by no means has fallen off. And I know that was actually a surprise to quite a few people, because there's been some talk that, right now clean is more important than green. We're going back to plastic bags. We've had some setbacks for the environmental movement, caused by the need to keep everything clean and separated and disinfected. But it's still a topic of concern.
Linda says, can you name any brands doing a good job now on these many new roles?
No, we're not going to play favorites. And the study didn't look at specific brands. What I'd like to actually do is answer the question the opposite way, which is, what is it that brands are not doing a good job on? And there were sort of three of those roles where the gap between how well brands are performing and what the expectation is was double digits in every country that we surveyed. And those were, drum roll,
Drum roll, drum roll.
One is about protection, right? So safety is very much top of mind. Are you doing everything you can to ensure the safety and well-being of employees, customers, and communities, right? So all of the stakeholders need to be protected by brands. Number two topic or brand rule that brands are falling short on by double digits across market is affordability and access, right? I mean, obviously that's a challenge for brands right now when stores are closed, but are you getting creative about finding new ways to get your products and services in front of your customers and talking about how you're doing that? And then the third is one that's really near and dear to my heart, and that was another surprise for me out of the study. Out of all of the 16 roles that David talked about, the last one that had double-digit gaps across the world is information, right? Are you doing enough to keep people informed? And the expectation is far higher than brands realize, that you are a content provider, an information provider, and help educate people about solutions for their lives.
Kind of goes back in with this idea that a business being called upon, business being called upon to fill in gaps or deficits left by other institutions. So absolutely, there is a leadership vacuum because government, particularly in this country, is not really seen as getting it done. But media is right there. And so this desire for brands to be sources of good information, particularly on topics where there isn't general agreement, doesn't come out of the blue. It comes out directly from the fact that people don't have a lot of faith in media, that they're worried about fake and false information and disinformation. They don't know where to turn to. And so they're sort of going to the place where they have perhaps the stronger, more trusting relationship to try to get what they need, whether it be, help solving problems or just information about what to believe.
Thank you. We have just a few minutes left with our guests, and we have so many questions and comments coming in. Linda was asking if the findings among U.S. companies and U.S. attitudes was the same globally, or was it any different?
It was very similar, Linda. The story for the U.S. really mirrors the global story, and there were some places where U.S. consumers actually even reported higher increases in the importance of trust. So it was very interesting to see that, but generally the same story in the U.S. as globally.
Great. And then what I thought we could do is just kind of skip around a little bit on the charts and just tell us what else people will find when they dig into the charts and in the report. What else is there that they should look at?
Yeah, you'll find a lot of data around the expectations for brands in this section. And then if you continue on into, past sort of slide, here's the protect more, be more accessible. If you go into this next section, we also have some information around advertising avoidance, right? So it is so difficult to get through to people. When we looked at where did people gain or lose trust in brands, it's all about either, aside from personal experience with a brand, it's about earned media, it's about pure conversations, much more so than paid, right? So that's very challenging for advertisers, right? Paid these days is much more a supporting role. We looked at spokespeople, right? People want that expertise. They want a personal connection. They want the empathy.
So why celebrity all the way down here?
Isn't that interesting, right? Celebrity is not what builds trust. However, if you look in the middle of the slide there, a celebrity who shares my hardship, right, and has a personal connection is much more trusted than just a plain celebrity, right? So I think what we're really seeing is that you want to show people you can have that personal connection, compassion, and empathy have to play such an important role.
Excellent. Linda says incredibly valuable information. Thank you for sharing that with us. And Rose has been tweeting. Everybody, please go to Rose Horowitz 31. She's been tweeting and sharing. And Tonia also shared our live feed. And again, people can watch. So I'm going to give you both a chance to give us your kind of final thoughts and what comes next for the Barometer, the Trust Barometer team for the rest of this year. And what are you looking at? So we'll start with you, Tonia.
What comes next for me is a vacation. We've been working very hard and very busy. So joking aside, we are actually beginning to make plans for our 2021 Trust Barometer, which is the annual Trust Barometer study, which fields in 28 markets, is a very large operation. So it has quite a lead time. We'll be in the field in October, November. And it's it's a very interesting exercise to now take a step back and think about, boy, what is the conversation going to be about 6 months from now, right? And out of all of these changes that we're seeing in the world, which ones are people going to want to talk about in January? So that's what we'll be working on in the fall, and looking forward to seeing what comes out of that.
Great, thank you. And please follow Tonia. She's on Twitter, Tonia Ries. Please follow her. Let's go to David Bersoff.
Sure. I think the message I would leave folks with is that this is truly a moment of reckoning for brands and business, that they have been placed, and to some extent have placed themselves a bit on a pedestal in terms of being determined to help make things better, to adopt this multi-stakeholder view, to be positive forces in society. And how they respond to these three crises, the pandemic, the recession, the discussions about systemic racism, how they respond, not just with their words, but with their actions. There was a time a few years ago where just being brave enough to talk about issues like LGBTQ or gun control or race was enough to give you credit. Those days are long gone. You can't just talk about these things. You have to do them. You have to perform. And whether or not brands perform around our kind of triumvirate of crises, I like to say that, we're basically one horseman short of an apocalypse these days. How brands perform is going to determine whether or not they truly emerge from this as the heroes we hope and expect them to be, or whether or not they're going to basically reveal themselves to have feet of clay, fall off that pedestal, and end up on the ash heap on top of government and media.
Thank you. And that's a good, strong message on which to end. We're so grateful to our guests, Tonia Ries and David Bersoff. One of the things we do on the show that television doesn't need to do is we bring back our card and tell people, because folks are coming every second, coming on and off, so that we've encouraged them to watch this later. Tonia Ries, Executive Director, Intellectual Property at Edelman, and David Bersoff, Head of Thought Leadership Research at Edelman. Thank you both. We have some housekeeping and other things to do. We'll let you get back to your day. One Zoom call after another, is that right?
Yes, just like the rest of us. Thank you for making this. Thank you for making this a very fun one. I always enjoy it. Thank you.
And I hope you'll come back, and we don't have to wait till January if you have more insights. As I said, solutions, not sales, made me sound really good to a lot of people. So I appreciate that. Just a quick thing. Tonia, when do you think you would get on a plane next? If you were a betting person, when do you expect to be on a business plane trip?
Well, I don't know about a business plane trip, but I actually have a ticket to fly from New York to New Orleans and mount a rescue operation. We'll be driving back to New York with my dad, who has been stuck in New Orleans. So we're trying to prevent him from getting on a plane.
Right.
So,
well, what a wonderful thing. Great to hear that. We wish you and your family the very best, and Operation Dad Rescue will.
That's right.
I'm very interested in this because one day my daughter and my son may need to do this for me. So I'm all for children rescuing their dads. And let's talk to David about his wedding, the wedding that he's helping put together. And also, when do you think you'll get on a plane?
Right after the stage 3 trials of the vaccine are successful, might be a good time to be getting on a plane. Hopefully the wedding will occur a lot sooner than that. What we might have to do is just, small, intimate family ceremony and then save the party for sometime in 2021.
Yeah, my 50th birthday is supposed to be in October. Well, my birthday will be, but the giant party my wife was planning will have to wait for another time. Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you, Tonia, Ries. We really appreciate you. And thank you, David Bersoff. Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We're so grateful to our friends at Edelman for coming on here and talking and sharing their thoughts, their ideas. I learned so much. I know you did too. And please check out the report. You can find it on the Edelman website and just search for the Trust Barometer 2020. We're always looking for speaker ideas, guest ideas for this show. So please let us know. And also tell us if you have ideas for various ways in which we can collaborate. We've got a lot of exciting plans coming up for the various projects and shows that we're doing. We want to tell you what's coming up next. Tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. in Manila, we'll be joined by Maria Ressa. She and her colleague Roy Santos have been convicted of cyber libel. The former CNN journalist is head of Rappler, a news site that's critical of President Duterte. Both have been released on bail pending appeal, but could face 6 years in prison. The case is being seen as a test of press freedom in the Philippines and many other parts of Asia. And there you see Maria Ressa, and our producer Rose Horowitz at Rose Horowitz 31 will be joining me in asking Maria questions. So please join us and tell your friends. And then on Friday, a change of pace, Netflix Indian matchmaking. This is a worldwide top 10 show. And Sminthi Mundra will be here, executive producer of Indian matchmaking, Oscar-nominated director of St. Louis Superman. And we'll also be joined by Vyasar Ganeshan, a participant in Indian matchmaking. He's a writer by profession, and he will be with us. So make sure you join us in watching these two shows coming up, and we're always looking for your guest ideas. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Thank you, and thanks for all your support. My email is sree@sree.net, sree@sree.net, and I'm on Twitter @Sree. Our archives are all under YouTube/SreeNet. Please check them out, and please join us again for another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. And with that, we'll say goodbye. Thanks very much.